Hey, are you really still watching that? Nothing's happened in like 6 hours. I really think that... Whoa, a crow just cawed. Bro, a crow just cawed. Not to burst your bubble, but like they're out in the wilderness. Don't you think it's possible that a crow cawed just because that's what birds do? No, it's gotta mean something. Just wait, something's gonna happen. I promise. Okay, you enjoy. I'm gonna go do something positive with my time. Yeesh, what a weirdo. Dude doesn't know what he's missing. This is gripping stuff.
The next morning.
Oh, cool. It's Jason. About time they came to the game. Too bad he missed out. Hello everyone and welcome to the 10th anniversary PTB with the grand unveiling of the long-awaited, probably the most desired chapter in all of Dead by Daylight's history, that being Jason, otherwise known as the Slasher TM in the game. With such a long-awaited chapter, how did they do? Is the power good? Is the power any fun? How are the perks? How are the survivor perks? Well, let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead and get into answering all of those questions. First off, is Jason's power any good and is it any fun? I'm happy to answer that it's both. Now, I do want to preface that there may be a bit of bias at play here because strangely, there's a lot of similar DNA from the Xenomorph on Jason. You have a map mobility option that grants you a lot of information, and there's a very deadly short to mid-ranged attack. So obviously this character from a gameplay perspective is in my wheelhouse. Regardless though, I still think the power feels good to use because of one major reason. You're always doing something. Whether it be running around the map and teleporting to get back into chase, quickly grabbing a spike and executing some anti-loop, there's very little downtime on this character at all. Additionally, there's a lot of depth to the character. The spike attack is very narrow, meaning you can thread it through very small spaces a la Deathslinger. You can also orbital with it, which is frankly kind of goofy, but it's there. You can also just use your teleport to get around the map, or you can use it to cut off survivors a la Spirit. There's a lot on the surface for these powers that make Jason moderately good, but a clear skill curve for all aspects of his power that could take you to the moon, which is always a mark of a good power when you have that sense of progression and improvement over time. Also, the character surprisingly has some pretty good add-ons as well. My favorite was the Coroner's Coffee, which not only throws the survivors further when you spike them, but gives you 13% haste for 3 seconds. However, you can't really go wrong with a lot of their add-ons, to be honest. You can use Deputy's Badge to get more info on gen progress across the map. You can use Bloody Smile to improve the detection range for your teleport's information. I could really keep going because he really does have that many good add-ons to use. Furthermore, a lot of the really good add-ons are simply green add-ons, meaning they're really cheap. So from a blood point perspective, it's really cheap to play this character, which is really nice. The only minor nitpick that I have is that Jason kind of feels sluggish a lot of the time. And the reason for that is he is unfortunately a 4.4 speed killer, meaning that he is slower than the average killer. I really like the design they went with Springtrap, where he was 4.4 with his projectile and 4.6 without it. I mean, we've already reheated a lot of Springtrap's nachos for this power, so why not take that too, since that'll make the character feel better overall. I also think it would lend itself better to kind of like the bulldozing nature of Jason if the character had his speed variation going faster when he's trying to melee you, but taking his time more when he's trying to ranged attack you. Overall, as a fan of the franchise, I feel this chapter did Jason justice. They accounted for most of his well-known abilities, the teleporting, the foggy essence, the grabbing random items in the environment to use as weapons, etc. The only thing I could really say that was kind of like omitted or not really accounted for was some sort of rage mechanic, since that's a pretty beloved part of the character. However, I'm not at all sad that it's not there because most everything has been accounted for. So enough about the character, what about his perks? His perks aren't as bad as I've seen people talk about, but I feel like there's a pretty big reason why, and we'll talk about it later. Hex Scared to Death is after 3 hooks. Whenever you break a pallet in chase, the survivor screams and becomes hindered by 13% for 3 seconds. This seems really strong in theory, but doesn't activate until deep in the game. So while this could be a good anti-hold W perk, it doesn't really activate until it's too late. That on top of the fact that it's a hex mean that if you actually do start to get some value out of this perk, it's likely just going to get cleansed So it feels like a lot of effort for not a whole lot of return. Honestly, this perk isn't really active enough to really justify its restrictions. I feel like I would have rather seen this perk go off of tokens and maybe reduce it to 2 hooks. That way we could actually see some more use. But as it currently stands, it feels like you're jumping through a lot of hoops for what is relatively not a lot of value. Silent Shadow is probably the biggest winner out of Jason's teachable perks, giving you undetectable at the start of the trial and permanent undetectable after all gens are completed. This not only can be paired with lethal for a very dominant early game, but can also be paired with endgame builds for a scary and oppressive endgame. People have been asking for a perk like this for a while, and while it doesn't really mesh well with a lot of my favorite characters, it'll be great for most of the roster. Finally, we have a Rampage, which is whenever you break a pallet or wall, you earn a token. And whenever you're pallet stunned or blind for the next 13 seconds, you gain 1% haste for each token. This is similar to the first teachable that we talked about in the fact that it has a lot of restrictive aspects that hold it in place. It's so restrictive that honestly it may not see a lot of use, especially considering the fact that most Survivor players pre-drop these days. The idea that you're going to be getting stunned enough to get this number even moderately high is frankly a pipe dream. I feel like a different trigger state for the haste would be more ideal, and that may fix all the problems with this perk, but it doesn't really fit the whole vibe of the perk being like a rampage where you're just storming through breaking things as you're trying to get to the person. So it's kind of like, it feels like a darned if you, darned if you don't. It's kind of just designed in a way that I don't see it getting consistent value. Speaking of perks, we are now getting to what I would consider to be the negative part of the PTB. It was surprise dropped in the patch notes that an original Survivor is coming with the 10th anniversary drop, which is huge news for Survivor mains who felt left out. So that's really cool. However, the perks that come with them, they're a lot. First, let's start with the one I actually liked a lot and felt strong but fair. Lend a Hand is a perk that after cleansing or blessing a totem, you can apply a BNP style effect to a fellow survivor's health bar, permanently applying 4 charges. I've heard this on stream today referred to as brand new heart, which I think is very wholesome. I like that a lot. This seems really strong, and it definitely can be with Resurgence in tandem, but the idea that you had to sit and spend a long time blessing or cleansing a totem makes it feel a little bit more even. You put something into the game and then you get a good effect out of it. Makes sense. I wish more Survivor perks were designed this way. This is foreshadowing, because that can't really be said about the next 2 perks we're going to talk about. The one that's getting probably the most negative press is Wide Open Throttle, which is whenever you fast vault a pallet, you gain 50% haste for 3 seconds, and the pallet is instantly reset and blocked for 60 seconds. The fact that this is not an exhaustion perk is frankly unhinged from you behavior. I was running this today and throwing Shack pallet frivolously, resetting it with Wide Open Throttle, getting another loop around Shack, vaulting the window and getting life because I'm not exhausted. I have turned the strongest general tile in the game into something that's even more powerful because I can use Shack Pallet more than once, can use it and save it without it being kicked, and still activate my exhaustion perk because teehee, we love easy activation, extremely strong perks. It's totally good for the game health, guys. It's so goofy. And the funny thing is that like both of these effects are so powerful that they could have been put on a single perk individually. You could have had, oh, hey, I vault over this and it immediately resets the pallet and then it's blocked for a while. I am going to vault this down pallet and I get a haste that's not tied to exhaustion. Both of these are extremely good effects on their own and are justifiable for a single perk on their own, but not only are they on a singular perk, but it's for an extremely easy activation. Behavior is not beating the hand-holding allegations with this one, and believe it or not, I feel like this other perk that we're about to talk about might be worse. Cross-examination is a perk whenever you're within the killer's tear radius, you get little light trails that follow the killer. When you follow those light trails, you gain elusive, the really powerful status effect that makes you near impossible to track. The problem with this is that it works in chase. So mid-chase, if you break line of sight at all, you suddenly become nearly impossible to track, meaning you can immediately break chase, ergo breaking bloodlust, that sort of thing. This perk was hell on Larry's because after disappearing behind a wall, a survivor could go into like 4 different possible rooms, and since I have nothing to track them through, there was really no way to really tell where they went. I've said this before and I'll say it again, just like we found out with the original Eruption that applied the incapacitated status effect, I feel like incapacitated shouldn't have been applied through perks, and we found out the hard way how powerful that was. I feel like elusive is much the same way. It's flat out just too powerful of a status effect to be given out willy-nilly, and especially in cases like these where the activation state is extremely simple. I'd understand more if this was a perk that only worked when you were outside of chase, because then it could be a fun perk for trailing the killer for beamer safe. That would make sense to me. But as it currently stands, it's just a lose chase for free perk, and it will be a menace if it goes live and people catch on to its true strength. As a minor aside, some quality of life changes were made to the game, which I do appreciate. The aura customization features have been expanded upon once again, including a lot of new auras like hex totems, boon totems, blocked objects, exegate switches, etc. That's always a welcome change. In addition, players can now check what a killer's power does mid-game if they're unfamiliar. Keep in mind this is still tied to whenever the killer is actually revealed, whether that be through chase or a lost health state, so it's not like they're getting extra information or cheating in any way, shape, or form. This further gives newer players more access to information in-game, which has been a dire need since I've been seeing the skill level of the average survivor go down pretty starkly, so both of these are a W. What is not a W, however, is that we've gotten confirmation from Behavior that there will be no live design changes for new chapter releases anymore, which I think is a catastrophic decision considering both bad balance and bad health have kind of taken over the game to a large extent. So many characters and perks have been bugged, horribly so, some for literal years, and still haven't been fixed. So the idea that there's going to be a kind of a hand wave whenever there's a new chapter drops in terms of getting these dire fixes into the game is frankly extremely concerning. Many characters like Legion, like Xenomorph, like Plague, like Wesker, like Knight, etc. used to be rather fun characters to play, but then were bogged down by clunk and unaddressed bugs for so long that they feel like they've frankly been forgotten. So now, even if they choose to address these situations, we know for sure it will be at a much more staggered rate, meaning that the bugs we've come to hate could be in the game for even longer. Furthermore, this extends to balance as well. It's no secret that the game's balance has been rather lopsided with things like palette density, overpowered perks, etc. However, instead of addressing this, once again, we can now hand wave and say, nah, there's new content, so we can't do anything about that right now. In the past, I think I would have been fine with this, and I believe I even thought something like this would be nice back in the release of Stranger Things Part 2. However, you kind of have to, read the room, so to speak. If both game balance and game health aren't great, you should probably address that. Hot take, but at a certain point people will stop welcoming new content because if the state of the game around it is far from ideal, then people aren't going to be as eager to hop into the game and try the new stuff. Hell, I had people doing this verbatim in my stream today around the Jason PTB. They were saying that Jason is cool and all, but the game feels rough, so they weren't really excited, which is painful to hear considering he's one of the most anticipated chapters of all time. But hey, honestly, you reap what you sow when it comes to this stuff. If you don't want to address game balance and game health, that's the bed you've made. If you lose people wanting to get into your new chapter as a result of that, that's the consequences of kicking the can down the road over and over and over again. So hopefully Behavior sees this and takes it as a warning of, hey, even your most anticipated chapter is being met with some lukewarm responses from some players because of the game surrounding it. So you might really need to step it up when it comes to the upcoming chapters not being seen favorably because of the surrounding aspects of the game, that being poor game health and poor game balance. Overall, if I had to give this PTB an overall rating, 10 being the best PTB ever and 1 being absolutely awful, I'd probably give it a solid 7 out of 10. Jason, his power, his add-ons, frankly, I think you guys did an excellent job. You have all the major aspects of his source material's abilities and gave him a lot of good add-ons to work with. Perks honestly aren't that bad in theory, but often come with a lot of restrictions to activate which hold them back overall. What holds this rating back from being higher is that the survivor perks are frankly problematic, introducing more extremely strong effects for very little input, which is already a disturbing trend which will further worsen the game's already lopsided balance. In addition, the stark lack of, and at this point outright refusal, to balance or do sweeping fixes just because the game is releasing new content spells a rather concerning future for the game. It kind of puts this dark omen over the future of the game because that means that periods of bad game balance and bad game health will last longer since we're going to omit trying to change those things until specifically the mid-chapter patches. I hope this isn't something they stick with in the long run, but only time will tell. But what did you think of the Jason PTB? What rating would you give it out of 10? Let me know down in the comments below, and thank you for liking and subscribing today. We really appreciate it here at the Mr. Headache Studios. When did I have studios? Other than that, that's it for today's video, friends. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. But if I don't see you there, I'll see you when I see you. Goodbye.